Thank you for being here this evening. We'd like to call the City Council special meeting to order. Just by way of information, we have two meetings right now at 7 o'clock, which seems a little ironic, but we have a budget meeting we need to get to first because that is what is required for us according to state law. So we're going to go through the special meeting here first, which is only 3 items, and then we'll be moving on to the regular City Council meeting agenda. So Vanessa, would you move to roll call, please?
Councilmember Chapados?
Here.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Wade?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Mayor Price?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Great. First, we off on the special council meeting agenda tonight. We have a public hearing. Item 3.1, the mayor and city council shall hear public comment on the city's primary property tax levy for fiscal year 17 and 18. This is a public hearing. At this time, we turn a few minutes over to Brenda, our finance director, after which the public hearing will be open to anyone who wishes to address the city council at this time. We ask that you speak to this item and this item only. So thank you, Brenda.
Honorable Mayor and members of the council, consistent with Title 42 of the Arizona Revised Statutes, this public hearing is for public comment on the city's primary property tax levy for fiscal year 17-18. The primary property tax levy will be brought forth to council for adoption at a future council meeting no later than the July 18th, 2017 meeting.
Thank you, Brenda. Anyone else in the audience like to approach the council this time on this item, on the city's primary property tax levy for fiscal year 17-18? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 3.1 and move to item 3.2. This is PH 17-14. The mayor and city council shall hear public comment regarding the adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 2017 and 2018. Again, same rules apply. Brenda.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, consistent with Title 42 of the Arizona Revised Statutes, this public hearing is for public comment regarding adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 17-18. As the tentative budget for the fiscal year was adopted May 16, 2017, this hearing is required as part of the formal process to finalize the fiscal year 17-18 budget.
Thank you. So again, it's open to the public at this time. If you wish to approach the podium and speak to this item and this item only, we welcome you to do so. Okay, seeing no one. Dennis, just by way of question, there was a question from a council member on making a comment during a public hearing. I assume that's perfectly okay, right? I mean, this is a time for back and forth in that measure?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Chapados, do you have a comment, question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge all of our directors and the city manager. This was a long, arduous process. We had a lot of good input from the BFO committee. We did a little bit different this year. But I especially want to call out the directors. A lot of you came forward with some requests, and I think our focus this year was very definitely and rightfully so on personnel issues. So thank you all for making sure that we understood the critical need for those positions that are put forth in this budget, and thank you for your ongoing service to the citizens of Maricopa.
Okay. Okay, seeing no one approaching the podium at this time, on this item, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to the regular agenda items agendized on this special meeting agenda. This takes us to item 4.1, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Maricopa, Arizona, approving and authorizing an inter-fund balance loan in an amount not to exceed $6 million, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to consummate the transaction contemplated by this resolution, and declaring an emergency. This is for discussion and action. Brenda.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, the City Council previously approved certain expenditures from the city's general fund, some of which are HERF eligible, related to the design and construction of the State Route 347 overpass. The eligible expenditures made by the city from the general fund will be reimbursed through an interfund loan to the city's HERF fund over a period of time. The eligible expenditures related to the design and construction of the State Route 347 overpass. As part of the adoption of the fiscal year 17-18 operating budget, the mayor and council will authorize the reimbursement of $500,000 from the HERF fund to the city general fund in fiscal year 17-18. Beginning in fiscal years 18 and 19, or fiscal year 18-19, and fiscal years thereafter, until the general fund is reimbursed in full for the expenditures not to exceed the amount of $6 million, the council will determine the amount of HERF monies to be used to reimburse the general fund on an annual basis. The date of the expenditures will be after June 1st, 2017, and as I stated previously, will not exceed $6 million, the amount originally authorized by council.
So Brenda, just in layperson's terms here, the $6 million is again, it's a transfer from one fund to another that the city has, but that HERF is highway user revenue funds.
Yes.
And those are monies that are allocated to us from the state of Arizona on a yearly basis. So basically, by loaning ourselves this $6 million from one side of the balance sheet to another, we will replace that money on an annual basis yearly as councils deem moving forward to supplement that $6 million in payback, so to speak, as it comes from the state year after year moving forward. Is that correct?
Honorable Mel, that is correct.
Okay. So that's the item before us. There are other questions, concerns, comments on that? Again, based on, yes, Councilmember Manfredi.
It's directed to you or you, whoever. My question then is, it's every year starting this year we're allocating $500,000. Then every year coming up following, we'll choose the allocation as a council?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Manfredi, that is correct. For fiscal year 17-18, it has been budgeted at the amount of $500,000, but council in future years will make a decision as to what amount will be reimbursed.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Wade.
Along those lines, is there a minimum or a cap?
Honorable Mayor,
Question.
Councilmember Wade, there is no minimum to be reimbursed every year. If council chooses not to reimburse in any given year, you have that ability. The cap is to the extent of the $6 million that was originally allocated through the original expenditures.
Okay, thanks, Brendan.
Just by way of declaration there, I mean, again, this is the council's purview to decide where monies go each and every year. And so while the idea is if you're taking from a savings account, you want to pay that savings account back from your checking account as you have that money year over year. But what if there's an emergency? What if there's something that comes up? We wanted to make sure that the council had the ability to say it wasn't mandated that it had to be paid back in that year. So in essence, you could pay it back, a year later by reinstituting. If you had this emergency, you could cover that $500,000, that hole if it happened, and then you could reinstitute the $500,000 the year after that. So really, it would just delay it by a year. But there's no interest on the loan because it's the money that the taxpayers have that's in one account versus another. That's all it is. So again, it's an intra loan there, so to speak. That makes sense? Okay. Any questions? All right. With that, can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve Resolution 17-20.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 4.2, Resolution 17-21, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Maricopa, Arizona declaring an intent to reimburse the general fund with credits from the city's contribution to the Public Safety Retirement Personnel System for the lump sum payment to public safety personnel representing their excess contributions to PSPRS as determined by Hall v. Orp and Parker v. PSPRS. Discussion and action. Brenda.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, the city and public safety employees are required to make contributions to the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, PSPRS, pursuant to Arizona revised statutes. The court recently determined in Hall v. Orp and Parker versus PSPRS that public safety employees have been over-contributing since 2011. And to refund these excess contributions, the city will provide each affected public safety employee with a lump sum payment in exchange for a credit to the city's future contributions to PSPRS. As part of the adoption of the fiscal year 17-18 operating budget, City Council will approve the use of general fund monies for the lump sum refunds to the affected employees. It is anticipated that the refunds made to the public safety employees from the general fund will be reimbursed by credits of future payments. That being that instead of the money that the city would pay to PSPRS, we will use that money to refund the lump sum payments made to the public safety employees. And that will be over a period of time throughout the next fiscal year. We anticipate that we will be able to keep that all within one fiscal year. We might fall over into next fiscal year, but we'll take that into account in the 18-19 budget if necessary. The city intends to reimburse the general fund in an amount not to exceed $1.3 million.
Okay, so same thing, council. Again, Brenda did a very good job explaining it, but the layperson's terms is, there's this lawsuit out there. The lawsuit says we have to reimburse a lump sum now. We'll get that paid back to us over the payments in the upcoming years, or year and a half, as we would normally pay out through paychecks. And so once that's done, it just comes back to the general fund rather than going to an employment contribution. So essentially, it's a wash. It's just a matter of, we got to pay it now. We get it back in a year and a half.
Honorable Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
So moved.
Have a motion and
Support.
a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. This takes us to item 4.3 of the City Council Special Meeting, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Maricopa, Arizona, adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2017-2018 or fiscal year 17-18. This is for discussion and action. Gregory, take it away.
Honorable Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I see they're pulling up my presentation. As you recall, in the past, there has not been a lot of activity between the consideration of the tentative budget and the consideration of the final budget. Well, that was thrown out of the window this year. There was quite a bit of activity that occurred, and so my intention is to highlight some of those activities, and as a result of those activities, some of the recommendations that's being made to you for the tentative budget. Some of the highlights of the final budget: the primary property tax rate remains at $4.78 per $100 of assessed valuation, so there is no property tax rate increase. The secondary property tax rate actually reduces from $1.69 to $1.40 per $100 of assessed valuation. We're adding positions in public safety and financial services, IT, and development services. There is a heavy investment in capital equipment and street maintenance and construction that totals $11,847,843. This budget also funds the fire administration design, building design at $1 million. Also, we fund the payback of the PSPRS at $1.3 million. The contingency is held at $1 million. A couple of the events that impacted the tentative budget, perhaps one of the most significant is learning from the league that we are getting $709,000 approximately less in state sales tax revenues. Also, we were able to finalize our revenue projections, and that resulted in an increase in $734,649 to local sales and use tax. Our projections are still very conservative, but we think that it is consistent with how the economy is performing, and we believe that should there be a dip in the economy, that we're prepared for that as well. Based upon those events, there are several changes that are being proposed to the tentative budget. The first is to increase local sales and use tax to $734,649. The increase of HERF amount to $1,111. A decrease in state income tax of $291,364. A decrease in state sales tax of $220,710, a decrease in the vehicle license tax of $66,743. You've established, with the approval of the previous resolution, a transfer to general fund from HERF to cover the $6 million that was loaned for the grade separation project. In expenditures, there are a few adjustments, a decrease in contingency funding, as was just reported. We know today that the cost for the payback for PSPRS is going to be about $1.3 million. We had previously anticipated $1.8 million, so we're recommending a decrease of $500,000 to contingency fund. Also, there was we caught some areas where the numbers were misstated for the firefighter captain position. That's $44,871, so that can be decreased. And per your tentative budget adoption, you asked to increase a contingency fund by $41,000 to cover those things such as the fire kitchen and a few other miscellaneous items that are included in there. There are a couple of outstanding issues to review. The mayor proposed the movement of $43,000, I believe, out of the equipment capital fund to cover the cost of filling in the hole at Copper Sky. We believe that it will result in better operations, certainly a much cooler or heated operation working out there. So we certainly are supportive of that proposal. The other is the $25,000 for the BCCs. At the time that the BFO discussed this, we had not made our final adjustments. So if you're wanting to, and I'll let the mayor address this as well. My understanding is that it wasn't recommended, the $25,000 at this time. If you wanted to go back and readdress that, then I would recommend taking it out of contingency funding.
So, council, just some outstanding. So just the audience members, the BFO is the Budget, Finance, and Operations Committee, and just like City Manager Rose said, between the approval of the tentative budget, we'd had a Budget, Finance, Operations meeting prior to that, and then we went back to discuss some of the things that the council had directed to kind of work out and kind of get into the weeds on a few things. And in that process, we had been notified prior to the meeting that we figured we were going to receive $709,000 less than originally anticipated, which we had already been working off a prior budget that included that. And so we had to trim a lot of stuff off of there. And so there were things that we had originally proposed that we needed to go back and take off. And so in that process, council throughout the course of that prior council meeting had also said, go to the BFO and look at this $25,000 for different BCCs. We had, kind of wrangled a few different numbers, and we decided we would look at that. But when we were shaving things down, we couldn't justify any money when we were having to sacrifice certain really important things. And so every dollar counted, and we were really looking for that. And so the recommendation was to come to you today and say, well, it was to be zero. But now that we have that $739,000, what was it, 5949?
734,000 and some change.
734,000.
I'll take the change.
You'll take the change. It covers that issue, but then it brings this back to the table. So that should give you some history as to why that $25,000 for the BCCs is back on here. We were not able to meet again prior to learning that the $734,000 was back, and so from our own local economy. And as far as this proposal, one of the problems, and you probably saw this in the report, is that we have that lovely design structure at Copper Sky. When you walk in, it's got that kind of, this is a cloud right here, but they have a hole cut in the middle. And as we look at a few things for that, it looks beautiful, but the problem is that if you've ever been in there in the winter, well, we don't have a large winter here, and it's hard to talk about this when it's 120 degrees outside, but the problem is our HVAC systems that are brand new are breaking a lot, because what's happening is the way they're centered, they're sending it through, and every time that door opens, it sends that air through to the top and down to the bottom and out the door. And so basically you have an upstairs that's overheated and a downstairs that's freezing. Okay, and so in efforts to try and correct that, it doesn't seem to work. and so it's causing the HVAC system to break, and there's a few other issues. Now, the reverse also holds true when it's hot, right? You have all the heat coming in, and so the HVAC systems are really working hard. And so there's a philosophy or thought that we probably, if we took some money and filled that in and made it still attractive to where it had a recessed ceiling and some internal lighting in there and those types of things, that what you would still have as a design look, but what you would also increase is you would increase floor space for the workout floor, which is desperately needed. So in this budget, we have proposed and approved up to this point, because this is the final tentative now, or we approved on the tentative, but we had proposed $100,000 for new equipment, additional equipment, replacement of equipment that was wearing. And so my philosophy or thought was, well, we've already approved it for this equipment. What if we were able to change that a little bit and say, rather than allocating more dollars, what if we just reduce the equipment by, and what the number in the proposal is about $43,000. Now, it's interesting because while I'm not real supportive of the $43,000, the reality is we think we can do this project for 2023, but there's a $20,000 contingency on there as well. So I think that's high personally, but again, I understand the need for it in case it, again, when you do budgets, you can't come back really unless you come out of contingency. So the idea is we can still approve that. Anything that's not spent there, if it's only $23,000 to do this, then that $20,000 that was held over for overages and those types of things goes back into the equipment budget. It also does a couple other things, and that is that when you budget for equipment on that floor based on the way its current design is that it creates a problem that you have to look for certain space-saving equipment. And so when you do that, it costs more. So if you can do that with more traditional equipment, less space-saving per se, but more along the lines of having that extra couple of hundred square feet, because it'll allow you to do things in lines right now where you're doing it in a circle, and it eats up a lot more space. So there's really not just a design change in it, but it really allows for us to increase and maximize the space. Well, as you know, with our push to increase Copper Sky memberships, drive revenue, those types of things, and you've got competition coming to town. Those are all good things for everybody, but with that, we need to be thinking outside the box. And so thus was my proposal to you all, so that it doesn't increase the budget. It utilizes what we currently have. It takes and reshifts around the money from stuff that's already been proposed for that very purpose, and then moves that $80,000 again back to purchasing of equipment that would be done after that area was filled in and supported. And so that was my proposal. Hope that gives you some
Mayor, I just
back
wanted
history.
to point out the total cost is $43,575.
Right. With 20 of it being in the
Right, contingency.
Contingency.
That's correct.
So council, I would turn it over to you to select where you wish to start talking on these two issues. You can start with the first one, the second, doesn't matter to me. But now you have the history. Yes, Councilmember Chapados.
Thanks, Mayor. I actually think that's a good idea for Copper Sky to fill in that hole and be able to increase our capacity and floor space. So I would support that. In looking at all the different conversations we've had about the BCCs and the fact that a lot of them, the new ones particularly, are going to be very, I think, special event and activity focused. I would support providing some funding for them, but I'm not really comfortable at 25. I'm thinking maybe somewhere around 16 to 20 range. But I'd also like to send this back to the BFO, if we approve it, to put some guidelines as to how that money is requested, what it can be used for, the process to provide funding, those kind of logistics.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Chapados, what I was recommending is that if you would like to pursue the $25,000, the reason that this was shifted to the BFO was to work out the criteria that the BCCs would be needed to meet in order to qualify for any of the funding. So if there's an appetite to revisit that issue, you could, because we are retaining contingency funding at $1 million, you would have the opportunity simply to extract the $25,000 from the $1 million, and the BFO would have the opportunity to establish the criteria.
Councilmember Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I tend to agree with, I absolutely agree with you, Councilmember Chapados, in terms of there should be some standards, some requirements, some procedures for how the BCCs will request and allocate and use their funds. But I think the 25,000 is a reasonable number to stick with. I like to try to keep it there at the 25.
Other comments, concerns, questions, thoughts? I'll share what I shared with the BFO. I think 25,000 is far too high. We're talking about two specific committees. None of our committees have gotten those kind of dollars. And granted, I understand that every committee is different. But, you know, the first one that we allocated funding towards was the age-friendly, and in that age-friendly, you know, they went out promptly and found sponsors, and so it supplanted any of that money that we gave to them. So, you know, while I guess I don't have a complete disagreement, I think that there should be some monies in there for name tags and things like that. I think that's a good idea. We've never had those dollars in there before, but at the same time, I'm really skeptical and hesitant to say that we're going to, you know, do those kind of dollars for these two committees, especially as startup money. I'd like to see, you know, at very most, I'd like to see that come way down. You know, I mean, maybe at 10 at the most, and keep 2 of it for name badges and things like that, and the other 8 to be split 4 and 4, something like that. And again, agreeing with the statement that there has to be some rules and regulations, because I don't want to see this as an ongoing expense. You know, that was very much what this council said when we created these two committees, was that we weren't going to fund it, and now here we are funding them. So while I agree that I'm up for looking at the evaluation of things evolve, I agree with that, but what I don't agree with is the fact that I don't want to see this in perpetuity, and that's where I feel like we're headed if we're not careful. So again, back to the dictates of creating some guidelines, but I'd like to see that number come way down. So let's go to Councilmember Smith and over to Councilmember Chapados.
Regarding the BCCs, I feel definitely more in the direction of what you're sharing, Mr. Mayor. I think that if we reflect back on the conversation that we had prior during City Council, we also discussed that we have a task force for art that will potentially be converting into an art committee, and that is something that would more than likely have events as well, or something that required some funding. And then we also discussed that there may be other BCCs that might need additional funding. So at the time, we were talking about $25,000 in a fund to be shared amongst all BCCs, not just these two. I feel that in the condition that we're sitting with the city and our tight budget, I feel that I'm not opposed to maybe $2,000 for name tags, whatever, but I feel at this point that we should not look at funding any amount of money for BCCs and heading in the direction of challenging all BCCs. And I think that the Age Friendly Committee is a good example of how successful it can be to be challenged to go and get funding from sponsorships. And Councilmember Chapados and I were talking earlier about the Age Friendly. Based on sponsorships, we're looking good for our next event. And I think it can be very successful. I think it engages the community in being a participant in the various events. And so therefore, I think that's a better way to go, especially considering our tight budget constraints regarding the funding of BCCs. I could potentially do 1 or 2 for name tags if that's really important, but I don't see us funding any additional amount.
Thank you, Councilmember.
And if there was funding, it would be for all BCCs, not for just these 2.
Okay. Councilmember Smith and over to Vice Mayor. I'm sorry, Councilmember Chapados, my apologies.
Yeah, I would support, if we're going to do any funding, it would be for all the BCCs, because I think there's things that come up in the natural course of some of their activities and programmings. It also would possibly enable them to do more community outreach and recruiting. We've kind of had some challenges in the past year of attracting and retaining committee members. So that would be one of my concerns. One of the issues I have with the sponsorship, I mean, fortunately for the Age Friendly Committee, our staff coordinator was a huge part of the success of us being able to secure sponsorships. That's not shared equally with some of the other committees. They all have people and staff coordinators that have strengths, but we're also competing with ourselves in terms of special event sponsorship. So again, I think this needs to be an overall approach. I think we need to sit down with community services and anybody else that's looking at sponsorships, and also take a look at what our community and our nonprofits and some of our other organizations are doing, because I see this as an opportunity for collaboration rather than competition. So I'd like to really take a step back, regardless of how we decide to go with funding for the BCCs. I think it needs to be more dialogue and more of a coordinated approach.
Vice Mayor?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I agree that if we're going to fund BCCs, we should fund all of them, but I have to confess I was a bit taken aback by some 25,000. I was always under the impression we would not fund any the BCCs, and then all of a sudden, 25K. This looks beautiful, and I commend the committee, but I would support 25,000. I would certainly not support more than, say, 2, I'll go for 3. But I don't want to, because once you start going on that trail, then each committee will create some reason to fund it. That's human nature. So let's not start that dance.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Wade.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we've gone full circle and around again in reference to this, because it was not my impression that during our last conversation that it was $25,000 just for the 2 new BCCs, that it would be something that would be shared among all. And that at that time, we also talked about having some type of process or procedures to make sure that those funds are used correctly and were asked for correctly. You know, quite honestly, when you look at the organizations that we might be talking about, it is more difficult at times for one group of organization to go and get funding from the community or get support from the community, and as it is with some others. And I use veterans as an example, and because I am a veteran, I speak to that. You know, I have never had an organization look at me in disfavor or what have you if I was trying to generate funds for a veterans activity or event. And I'd say probably the same thing would be the case with Age Friendly, because there's a certain sense of belonging, a sense of supporting that. That's not necessarily the same with all of the BCCs. And so our understanding in the beginning was that this would be seed money that would be available to be able to use. And I have to agree with Vice Mayor Brown. We would not necessarily want to go down the road where all the time, you know, BCCs are coming forth and asking for a handout. But I think that in this particular case, at this particular time, I think it's an opportunity to create quality organizations, which we are working towards with the individuals that are on those BCCs, and that we also have an opportunity to take a look at other BCCs that existed in the past and perhaps that currently exist, and perhaps there might be some benefit to that. I would like to see folks go out and look for sponsorship. That would be the ultimate way in which that organization operates. So I think that going back to where we were from the very beginning, looking at what the $25,000 was for the very beginning, that it was seed money, that it was not something that was automatically available, that an organization would have to come forward, show good cause, show good stewardship of the funds, and would be available if that was necessary, but also that they would be at the same time out looking for sponsorship, trying to get support from the community as well. So I think it gives these organizations, it gives these BCCs an opportunity to have a step up, if you will, and be out there. Now, if $25,000 is too much, then we can certainly adjust the funds on that. But I think it's about more than name tags and other things is that one.
I would agree with you. I think every committee is a little different, and I completely concur with your statement on the fact that every one of them is going to have a difference of ability to go out and derive that type of revenue. So I guess I'll continue on here, but I guess I'd go back to the point after we hear from Councilwoman Gussie. But I guess I'm wondering if this is obviously a position in which council's split on from a variety of different areas. Is this something that we can kind of then, rather than getting bogged down here, that we can kind of look to say if we send this back to the BFO, if that's what council wants, and then or set an agenda item where we bring it back in a work session and talk about the recommendation from the BFO, that at that point we can really hammer down into it based on the recommendations, based on the parameters, based on this conversation that's taking place today. And therefore, once we get to that point, we all agree on something, we then turn around and pull it from contingency, which we know going into this, we can't decide it now, but we know that we could decide it then by pulling from it whatever we decide on. Now, does that sound like something we can probably do that?
Honorable Mayor, if it's acceptable to you and the council, what I would like to do is to reconvene the BFO to go back and the initial charge was to create a criteria. And the only reason that changed is because we thought the budget was changing drastically at that time. So if it's acceptable to you, I would like to reconvene the BFO to have that discussion there and bring a recommendation to the you and the council at the full council level.
Okay. Councilwoman Gussie.
I am in favor of bringing it back to the BFO, and with not being a member of the BFO, I want to make sure that those members that are aware of two items that were brought up, collaboration with the 501s. Just keep in mind, there are two veteran organizations, the VFW, the American Legion, and there's also a Purple Heart organization. They are very limited on membership, and their fundraising goes towards membership, meaning that if the American Legion has a membership of 150 members or so, and we know that in the city of Maricopa there's over close to 4,000 veterans, but not all veterans qualify to be an American Legion member. Not all veterans qualify to be a VFW member, and definitely not all veterans qualify to be a Purple Heart recipient member. So just keep that in mind, that the collaboration doesn't work equal. And when I was told about this veterans organization, this committee that was being formed, it wasn't meant to compete against those other organizations. So keep that in mind also, that this committee has no funding whatsoever, and they're starting from scratch. So in order to even get awareness out there in the community to make sure what tasks that we're going to have going forward, we're going to need some funds to do that. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Smith.
Just one last comment on the subject of sponsorships. You would be surprised in a committee and the people that serve on that committee and the relationships and networking that they have just amongst their own personal circle. Just to give you an example, for the Rocket Challenge, I was able to go out just through my network, my personal connections, and get, I think it was $3,500 or $4,000 in donations from sponsorships in my own network. So you don't have to compete, and I obviously wouldn't suggest that we compete with organizations and nonprofits that are already doing their own fundraising. But within your own network of your committee members, those people that they know, there are ways that you connect with people who have a passion for what that committee does and what that committee serves to go out and get sponsorships funds. You'd be surprised exactly how easy it is. So I just don't want it to be assumed that we're all competing for the same funds, because every committee has different members with different networks and different circles, and it's a little easier than you think if you just look at who you have in your life that has a passion for those services and approach them. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking questions and seeing if people are willing. One last thought on because you also brought up the copper sky. I have my doubts as to whether, but I'm not an engineer, as to whether it can be done for $43,000, because I think you have to look at the design and whether that circle was meant to be filled in and can support weight. And to me, it seems like it's going to cost more money than what the 43, but if your proposition is that 100,000 has been allocated to fitness equipment and we won't exceed that 100,000 regardless of how much it takes to fill that in, then I would be in support of that.
I'll let Gregory answer this, but I think that J2 engineering or architects that helped actually construct they're the ones that helped develop the estimate, because those I-beams go right there, and so it's just a matter of attaching stuff to it. So that's my understanding. I mean, the city engineers here.
Councilmember, my understanding, certainly Community Services Director Christy Reister worked with engineers on developing this quote for you. So we're comfortable. We have a large contingency, almost as much as what we think the project is going to cost for that very reason. There are some unknowns that exist out there, but should it look as though it's going to be significantly different, then it will by necessity have to come back to the mayor and council for discussion and consideration.
So within those parameters and those boundaries, I'm okay with the proposal that you put forth.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Manfredi.
Thank you for the presentation so far. I'm okay with the mayor's proposal as long as it doesn't go over the $100,000 like Councilmember Smith mentioned. So I'm okay with that. The second thing is we've been talking about the BCCs now, but I remember when we spoke about them before, there had to be a matching component to it. So I really do believe it has to go back to the BFO. It really does, and the discussion today is pretty much mute at this point. It should go back to BFO, and it's going to come out of contingency anyway, whether we agree
What's
today
being
or we
recommended.
agree next month. So let's get it right. Bring it back to BFO and bring that back to us next month sometime or whatever it is.
I never dictate to the BFO, but
Yes, Councilmember Wade.
Yeah, I just wanted to just add, that I agree, that it should go back to the BFO, but that those of us who are not members of the BFO that are discussing it today, that our points of view be well taken into consideration. And I don't have no disagreement that wouldn't be the case. And I would say, I agree with you, Councilmember Smith, that you would be surprised the number of people who would support an activity event, but you would also be surprised the number of people who wouldn't. You know, and so not to be pessimistic or anything, but just having dealt in this arena for almost 20 years, I know who will and who won't. You know, and so it is, you give that opportunity to be able to at least be on a level playing field so that when you do actually go back to do that, because that's the intended goal, you will have something that's representative of what your abilities are, and there will be most likely people will contribute because they've seen success. But you have to get success by starting on the even play field. And the BFO or the just as a note, the Cultural Advisory Committee, when asked how much was available for resources, they were told no. So the anticipation is that there wouldn't be anything available, but we should probably do something forward to make sure that they're successful.
Okay. I guess that's the comments. Any other comments on this? I think that we are BFO bound on the BCCs, and we are a go on the other. As we, again, rather than rushing into it, let's do it right and let's make sure. But again, I know that both Architecton and J2 were there, I believe, if I'm quoting that right, who built Copper Sky, had evaluated that and put it into that range. And so again, that extra 20,000 is a, what they think that may be needed just based on unknown. So that being said, that takes us to the approval of this. Councilor Manfredi.
And then if they built Copper Sky and they give us the quote to fix Copper Sky, isn't it an error in Copper Sky that they should be paying to fix?
No, it was in design concept that way. It
Okay.
was. There's been many things that once we have designed and put into practice that you realize don't work out so well. If you'll all remember where we had the pit down here before,
yeah.
and now it's over there because no one down here could hear what we were saying. So it looks good on paper, but it doesn't always work in practice, and that certainly is one of those things that has turned out to be that way. So.
Cool.
All right. With that, can I have a motion?
Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Move that Resolution 17-18 approval.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Honorable Mayor, is that with the proposed recommendations?
Yes.
So we have that with the proposed recommendations and seconded accordingly. With that, can we move to a roll call, please?
Councilwoman Gussie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Chapados.
Yes.
Councilmember Wade.
Yes?
Councilmember Manfredi.
Yes.
Mayor Price.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. With
Mayor,
that,
if I might, I did want to commend the department directors and a special commendation for Brenda, our financial services director. She and her staff put in many, many hours that it takes, and a lot of challenges as a result of the state legislature, but we were successful in providing a budget, I think, that is reasonable and reflective of the needs that need to be addressed in the city. Thank you.
thank you very much. At that time, that concludes our City Council special meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn that special meeting, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That will take us right into the City Council regular meeting. Thank you all for attending that budget portion, and I would like to welcome you all to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2017 regular meeting. At this time, we'd like to call that to order and invite Reverend Arnold Jackson from Mount Moriah Church to please give us the invocation, after which I will lead us in the pledges of allegiance. Please rise.
Let's bow our heads in prayer. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this evening. We thank you for being able to discuss difficult issues and to still come out and be agreeable. God, we pray for all the things that have been discussed and for the things to be discussed, that you continue to guide us and lead us and give us your discernment. We thank you, God, for the mayor and the vice mayor and each city council member that deals with issues day in and day out, early in the morning and late at night. We thank you for the city manager and his staff, for the police, for the fire, and all the individuals that are giving their time and efforts. And even in this triple-digit weather, they're still serving. There are other individuals that are here tonight that have needs in the community that they want to see met. So touch, guide, and lead, and we will forever give you the glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name we pray and for his sake, and we all said, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor Jackson. This time we'll move to the roll call, please.
Councilmember Chapados?
Here.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Wade?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Mayor Price?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We have no proclamations, acknowledgements, and awards at this time. That will move to the report from the mayor. Obviously, a lot of things have been going on in the last several weeks. Just very briefly, had the opportunity to attend a variety of different functions. Have met with a lot of constituents over a variety of different things. Met with developers and hotel individuals. So again, the development community is alive and well, and you may not see it on the forefront, but we're working behind the scenes to make a lot of these things happen. Just as Councilmember Smith talked about earlier, if you weren't here, about a project that many of the council members had the opportunity to visit in the way of I guess we'd call them containers, and how they might be used for businesses and such. That's something that we've actually been working on for over 2 years. And so it just kind of gives you something that takes a long time when it comes to economic development, but I believe that it's time well spent, because at the end of the day, in 5 years or 3 years or a decade or more, you don't see that outcome unless you're willing to put in the time. So with that, again, there are several other things I attended. I won't bore you with those tonight, but I did. Real fast, I did have the opportunity to speak today at the SBDC, which is the Small Business Development Centers. All of the staff from around the entire state had come to Maricopa today. And so Denise and I went over to CAC and were able to participate with them and kind of show them a little bit of Maricopa hospitality, while simultaneously expressing our interest for them to keep us in mind as they continue to develop jobs around the state, but especially here in Maricopa. So with that, I will move to the report from the city manager.
Honorable Mayor, council members, there are two items I'd like to report on. The first one, I would ask Economic Development Director Denise Earhart to discuss with you. We're having some challenges trying to schedule bringing the Economic Development Strategic Plan before you, but I'll let Denise brief you on that.
Honorable Mayor and members of the council, last month I came before you for acceptance of the strategic plan, and I think I walked away with an understanding that we wanted to have a deeper dive into it. Therefore, a mini retreat was asked to be scheduled. We're having some challenges identifying a time that works for everyone in the evening at this time, so our goal is to find a time within July, hopefully, if not early August, to schedule that mini retreat with everyone. So that is pushing out the date of bringing back the item to council for acceptance. So I just wanted to give you an update on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Denise.
Honorable Mayor, council members, as you know, we are co-sponsoring the NABI tournament along with the Ak-Chin community, and I'm asking our Community Services Director, Christy Reeser, to brief you on that event.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, this is actually a really exciting partnership that has kind of changed over time since we've been working with the NABI Foundation, which is the Native American Basketball Invitational. And they had approached us because the Ak-Chin is a huge sponsor of their annual tournament, and they wanted to bring their tournament to Maricopa, where their largest sponsor is. So we started conversations, and they're using gyms throughout the city with the schools and other locations that have gyms, and including Ak-Chin. And they had approached us to see if Copper Sky could be a site. And of course, we are community partners with the Ak-Chin. We were happy to help out. And as the discussions and the meetings evolved, they approached us and let us know that the NBA had gotten involved with their organization, and they no longer wanted to use Copper Sky as a host site for their tournament, but a host site for an NBA camp. And so what they're doing is the tournament is for juniors and seniors. And so they're asking those teams that are participating, they have 64 women's teams and 64 men's teams that are coming out to participate. And they're asking those teams to bring freshmen to come. And the freshmen are the ones that are going to be participating in the NBA camp. They haven't let us know who's coming. They did tell us that they are current current and past players. So it sounds really great. They've also given us an opportunity to have our youth work with the camps. They need volunteers, and so I know our youth council will be participating. If you know any youth and you want, that are interested in participating, please let me know, and I will get them connected with the appropriate people. So we're really excited about this opportunity. And so the camp will be taking place at Copper Sky in the afternoons on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, July 10th, 11th, and 12th. And they're doing a kickoff event on Sunday, July 9th, and they have asked us to host it at Copper Sky. So they're going to be doing a parade of flags for all the teams that are participating in Copper Sky Regional Park around the lake area. And they'll also, we are going to section off an area for their players. They're going to be the Harrah's Ak-Chin, they'll be serving food for the players, and so we're going to do kind of like a roped off VIP area for them on the multi-gen lawn. But then we'll also have it open to the community. We're working on, we have some food vendors that are coming out, and there'll be some other vendors out for the event. And so we want the community to come and participate and be a part of it. It's not just for the Indian community. So we are, partnering with them, and we want to encourage the community to come out. One of the things that is really exciting is that they are going to be having fireworks at the event at the end of the evening. I think they're scheduled for 9:45. So hopefully it'll be another opportunity to come out and celebrate, and we can encourage the community to come out and participate and support these kids that are coming out to play in the tournament. So we're really excited. It's been an awesome partnership. They've been wonderful to work with, and we're just really excited. I mean, Maricopa, we're having the NBA come. It's really cool. So I think it's a really great thing for our community. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. Councilmember Chapados.
Christie said Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, but that would
Monday,
be
Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yes.
Hey, Christy, do you have a time, and you said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yes.
Sorry, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Did you have a time for the parade of flags on July 9th?
Yes, so on the 9th, the teams start arriving on Sunday at 6 o'clock. The parade of flags and opening ceremonies will be at 6:30 p.m. They have a presentation at 7:30, and then the fireworks will be at 9:45. So they'll have, I believe they have a DJ, and they'll have some entertainment, and they have some, they have some booths out there. We're encouraging our vendors to come participate, and then they'll have some fireworks. So it should be a lot of fun.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That will turn us over to the call to the public at this time. I have one speaker card for the call to the public. I'll ask Shelley Gillespie to come forward. But then after that, anyone that wishes to address the council, you may please do so. We have a timer up here that will let you know that your 3 minutes is coming to a conclusion. But with that, we look forward to hearing from everybody. Please note that we as a council can't typically respond if there's a question or concern, but we do want to hear about it. We'll get you in contact with one of our staff members, but we can't respond due to the fact that it's not agendized legally, but we would like to hear about it. So, Shelley, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor, Honorable Mayor, Council, staff, and fellow citizens. I'm here tonight to update you on Copa Shorts Film Fest newest program, and in conjunction with Maricopa Library, we had been speaking with Eric Serber, the director, for quite some time, and he asked us, could we develop a program that he could use as a base at the library itself? And we talked about it, and it grew. It went from a workshop or two to what we realized as a result of our experience with working with the younger folk for their films, that they need a lot more work than one workshop, which is what we did last year for the middle school. So what we're proposing, and you should have a form that looks like this, at the bottom of the first page, it says Maricopa Library Series. And actually, it could be as long as 2 hours for each workshop. We have room to be there till noon. We're going to start with the basics with screenwriting. We'll have excellent people who are working with us who are very expert, either in the area or we'll be bringing people from elsewhere. After the first 2 workshops, they're planned to be the second and the fourth Saturday mornings. And so we're going to look for people to be enrolled in this. Eric said he would work with us to promote it, and we're going to look for a commitment from these people for the full full 8 months, excuse me. And part of it, they would go to the festival itself and go to 2 of the workshops there. Then we'd move on to more of the workshops that we would have: budgeting, casting, how to fund your movie, how to use things to help with your Android and iPhone filming, things of that nature, and even getting into post-production. We'll fix it in post, people are always saying. And we also have access to a gentleman who can do a workshop for them on scoring the film with the music. So we have some really good resources, and because of that, and we have other programs here, and I encourage you to read them. I know I'll run out of time otherwise. But we're planning 3 workshops with Central Arizona College, and 2 out of the 3 we have all of the people lined up for. But we are going to try to fund this workshop for the students. We don't have funding, we're not for profit. And we figured out the numbers and what we need. We can fit 20 students. And I'm sure once they find out all the great resources and the hands-on work, we're going to try and incorporate buying some of these gadgets that enhance things, that everyone will want to be lined up. So we want to make sure we get, people who really have an interest for middle school or high school. And we're looking at 15 workshops, and we figured out it's a little less than 25 per session per student, or about, send this kid to camp for $375 for the whole 8 months. So we're working to make this a wonderful program with the library. And I encourage you to help us because we want to make this great and have our films wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate it. At this point, we'd turn the time over to the audience. Anyone that wishes to come up and address the council, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, seeing no one, we'll go ahead and move and close the call to the public at this time and move to item 7 on the agenda, the meeting minutes. This is for item 7.1 and 7.2. Any questions, concerns on these issues on these minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Move acceptance.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. That takes us to item 8, which is a public hearing. 8.1, PH 17-12, the mayor and city council shall hear public comment regarding the use of community development block grants, or CDBG funds. This is expected to be in the amount of approximately $265,000. But before we get to that, I do have a speaker card for this particular item. Terry, it's you. Would you like to speak after the staff presentation or before? Okay, we'll go ahead and let the staff presentation go forward then, and we'll call you up right after.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, David Noble, Economic Development Management Analyst. This evening, I'd like to give a short presentation, an update on the CDBG regional allocation process, and reveal the results of the council's evaluation of the 4 projects that were brought forward in the first public meeting on May 2nd. This hearing serves as the required second public meeting in that process. And later on this evening, we respectfully request that City Council make a resolution selecting one of the 4 projects to proceed forward. I'd also be happy to answer any questions that Council or the public has this evening. Again, this is a recap of the process, a brief recap. Approximately $265,000 are allocated every 2 years. The past 2 cycles have been used to alleviate slum and blight conditions in the Heritage District. Funds must be used to benefit low-income persons in areas, alleviate slum and blight, or address an urgent need. Here's some of the possible uses. It could be used for infrastructure, housing, public services, or economic development. This is kind of the process up till now and what we can look forward to. A conditional letter of intent was sent to the Department of Housing, stated that we did intend to apply for the regional allocation. There are 2 meetings that need to be held to gain public input on use of the funds. The first one was held on May 2nd. Tonight serves as the second one. We're looking to receive a recommendation by resolution from City Council this evening. The deadline for submittal to Central Arizona Association of Governments is August 1st. And the formal submittal is due by September 1st to the Arizona Department of Housing. The first project brought forth during the May 2nd public meeting was a floodplain analysis for the Heritage District. It is expected that this floodplain analysis would provide incremental floodplain mitigation solutions, encourage investment in the Heritage District, improve public safety, lower costs for home improvement, and this floodplain analysis and the subsequent removal of portions of the Heritage District from the floodplain aligns with elements of both Planning Maricopa and the Heritage District Redevelopment Area Plan. We have received assurances that upon completion of the study, there are some parcels of land that will be removed from the 100-year floodplain upon completion. We are also asking that when we write up the scope of the study, that it will identify possible funding sources to achieve those incremental steps to remove the entire Heritage District from the floodplain. The cost is estimated to be approximately $250,000. The second project brought forth at the first public meeting is half-street improvements for Taft Avenue. This is the western side of Taft Avenue, south of Edwards Avenue, and north of Honeycutt. The western half lacks curb, gutter, sidewalk, and landscaping. We believe it will encourage investment in the Heritage District, improve public safety, and it aligns with elements of the Heritage District Redevelopment Plan. Its estimated cost is $200,000. Third project is the Edwards Avenue half-street improvements. This is the northern side of Edwards Avenue, east of west of State Route 347 and east of Taft Avenue, west of State Route 347. I apologize for that typo up there. The northern half lacks curb, gutter, and sidewalk and landscaping. We believe it will encourage investment in the Heritage District. We also believe that it will improve public safety. It aligns with the elements of the Heritage District Redevelopment Plan, and the estimated cost is estimated to be $250,000. The fourth project that was brought forward during the first public meeting is a permanent location for the FOR Maricopa Food Bank. Currently, they are housed in a temporary location without food refrigeration capabilities. The funds will go to partially fund construction of a permanent location. Remainder of funding is expected to be a mix of ADOT funds, grants, and donations. The food bank serves 500 to 600 families per week. Recipients of help from the food bank vouch that they earn no more than 80% of the HUD area mean income, and that satisfies the low to moderate income requirement for CDBG use. Estimated cost is the total project budget is greater than the expected amount of the regional allocation. So the entire allocation, no matter what it may be, is being requested for this project. The City Council was presented with project evaluation sheets for each of these projects, and they were scored. These are the results out of 200 possible points. The Heritage District floodplain analysis received 196.7 average points. Taft Avenue received 133.6. The FOR Maricopa Food Bank permanent location received 121 points. And the Edwards Avenue Half Street improvements received 112.6 points. I'd be happy to answer any questions council or the public may have.
Council, you have questions this time? You want to ask it now, or you want to wait for Ms. Crane to speak? Okay. We'd like to invite up Ms. Crane. Would you hit that button?
Aha.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. My name is Terry Crane, and I'm here to speak on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves, the poorest of the poor of the community of Maricopa, the people that have no food, that have no food stamps, no cars, and can't be here with us tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of FOR Maricopa, as they've requested these grant funds to assist in the reallocation of the food bank. As you know, the present location of the FOR Maricopa Food Bank has been included in the ADOT overpass construction project for the Highway 347. Due to the construction, they were notified they had to vacate the building in May of this year. Currently, they are trying to run the food bank out of 900 square foot room as a temporary space. This is a challenge for both the volunteers, the community, and the residents of the shop owners of that shopping center. We have been searching for the last 9 months for a location that would meet the needs of the community and something that they could afford. There are very little property options in Maricopa that meet that need. Recently, they made an offer on the land just past the railroad tracks with the red barn on it. They are in escrow as we speak and should close soon. They hope the funds from the grant will help them with the purchase of the property and are writing grants to apply for loans and working with ADOT to come up with the needed funds to build the new food bank on that property. They have a gross budget for a new building and all the infrastructure required for its new location. We hope to have more information and more concise budget in the next few weeks. The grant has 3 objectives. Although you are only required to meet one, they feel confident they meet all 3 objectives of the grant. Objective 1, the project must benefit the low to moderate income persons. All food bank recipients must meet federal poverty guidelines. They must sign for this each time they come for their non-perishable food. Objective 2, slum and blight, must aid in the prevention or elimination of slums or blight. Because many of the participants live below the poverty guidelines, the addition of a food bank helps eliminate and lessen slum blight by allowing families and individuals to remain in sheltered homes without the need to substitute food costs versus shelter costs. Many individuals, including a large population of children and elderly, have serious health issues, and without proper nutrition, there can be very serious outcomes. Also, the addition of a food bank in Maricopa area helps eliminate homelessness due to food deficiency and shelter costs. Objective 3, urgent need, meet other community development needs, having a particular urgency which poses serious or immediate threat to the welfare of the community, which is recent or became urgent when other financial resources are not available to meet such needs. The Maricopa Food Bank served over 100,000 individuals in 2016, an increase of 25 to 30%. It is estimated that the population and demographic in Maricopa area increase, the need for a food bank will continue to increase and will be a determining factor for a quality of life that every human deserves and needs to ensure life viability and sustainability. Many families are just now beginning to get back on their feet from lost unemployment, home foreclosures, and serious health issues. If the food bank closes its doors, there would be a serious and immediate threat to the welfare of this community. Positive community impact. FOR Maricopa Food Bank's mission is to distribute food without cost to low-income individuals, families, and seniors. As mentioned previously, all recipients must sign a document indicating they meet the federal poverty guidelines. The food bank not only subsidizes households with nutritional food, but also maintains a back-to-school backpack program, school supply program, holiday food boxes, and we work with other agencies to facilitate programs for seniors, vets, and disabled, all of which increase the quality of lives for many individuals. Because there are few resources for this demographic, the food bank serves as the primary source for help, nutritional education, and special diet assistance. The need to relocate this food bank to a permanent location is dire. Grant funds would enable FOR Maricopa Food Bank to continue its service to the people of Maricopa, Stanfield, and Bapchul. With the population of the Maricopa area continuing to increase, the need to maintain a permanent location for this food bank is urgent. The Maricopa Food Bank provides the food, stability, health, and nutritional benefits to individuals and seniors and continually provides a better quality of life for our community. They feed approximately 500 to 600 families a week, with the statistics of 1 in 5 children in Pinell County goes to bed hungry. We also feed 1,100 to 1,500 children each month, 220 to 250 elderly individuals this month. This is just an example of the vulnerable populations in our community that count on the food bank to be there for them during difficult times. For those of you who know what we do and how it helps our community, you realize that they are an essential service in town. I'm just going to add a personal caveat to this. I've been involved with the food bank since its inception, and I've been on this journey with them for many, many, many years, and I've seen the passion and commitment and the good work that's been done through this small fledgling organization that started in a trailer in 7 ranches and was there for a long time. This organization seeks to serve the unservable, the people that have a need, that don't know where else to go for it. And I know since the food bank has moved over to its shopping center, the chamber office gets 5 to 6 calls a day from people wanting to know where the food bank is and are their hours still the same. So I urge you to please consider funding this project through this block grant, because it is a viable community service to Maricopa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Appreciate it. Council, questions, thoughts, concerns? Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Terry, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, all due respect to you, but you're the second person who has come before us to pitch supporting FOR. Robert Livingston, whom most of us know, General Manager of Harris, spoke. You speaking tonight. Is there any physical reason why Wendy can't come here herself?
Well, Wendy's volunteers to run the food bank, so she has to have viable employment, and her employment takes her out of state on occasion. So currently she's in Seattle, Washington working, and she couldn't be here tonight. She did take time off of work to come to the last city council meeting because she thought that this agenda item was going to be on the last council agenda, and it wasn't, so she had to go work.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Smith.
I'd first like to go, David, back to the floodplain topic. Yes. You have a picture that I think is a great picture. At this point, and I know it may be premature, but it would help me in understanding. So the red outlined area represents what? The Heritage District, or?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Smith, yes, that is correct. That is the Heritage District redevelopment area. Yes.
Okay. And do we know at this point, because there's, in my mind, there's really 2 phases, right? There's the phase to do a study, and then there's the hope phase that says we'll be able to potentially move some of the property in the Heritage District out of the floodplain. Could someone point to where we think that's going to happen if we are so fortunate to have that happen during the review?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Smith, If you want to look right at the edge, I guess it would be the northeastern portion there where the housing ends. I believe it's in that area. I believe floodplain manager Josh Plum spoke about that during the first public meeting. I'm not sure about how much land that actually will entitle, and we will not know until completion of the study, but it would be generally in the area outside of the Estrella Gin Business Park site.
Right, so there's that oval, which I
Yes.
think is the Australia Gin, correct?
Councilmember Smith, that is correct.
And then, so you're saying west of that?
To be honest, I'm not sure about the answer to that question, exactly where that property would be, but I believe it is to the, slightly to the south and to the west.
To the south?
Yes.
Okay. And what do we think the results of the study will do for us in terms of timing? And what I mean by that is, we get the results of the study. How many years in front of us will we have to wait to utilize that study where we will have funding in order to be able to do something?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Smith, I would not be able to answer that question. That would be something that would be determined by the analysis, but we would write the scope of the work to include possible funding sources and incremental steps to be able to achieve it. As you can recall, in 2010, a comprehensive flood study was done for the entire city, and I believe the result for just the Heritage District alone was a $25 million channel. That is an answer that we do not want to receive a second time. And so we would be very diligent in making sure that that study is crafted in a way that these results are achievable. I do not have a time frame that I can put on it.
I know it's a hard question because it depends on revenues that come in and money that's available, but I'm thinking that there's great potential that we'd have this study, and other than the hope that we might be able to remove some property from the floodplain immediately, it's not a guarantee, it is a hope, that we wouldn't be able to act on it for 5 years. And I was just trying to eliminate that concern. Is there anyone who might be able to have thoughts on that in terms of options or ideas on how we, I mean, I know we can't confirm anything because it's not part of a plan yet, but I'm just looking for reasonableness.
Sure. Honorable Mayor, Councilman Smith, I think what you're trying to see is, you know, how quickly will we be able to see the benefit of the analysis? And the reality is we have a letter from Pinal County. I think Bill can speak in deeper depth on it, but that really outlines that there are some potential areas within the Heritage District that that will be or have the potential to be removed out of the floodplain. The second thing, and I think it's on the slide here, it lowers costs for home improvement. So if we've identified solutions throughout the analysis, then there is potential for investors to go into the Heritage District and understand what the solutions are. So keep in mind that these homes in this area also have the ability to act as businesses. So we are allowing that encouragement. So we're not necessarily going to see the immediate, I guess, benefit of dollars to implement the plan, but we're going to see other potential solutions along the same plan, if you will. Does that help?
It does, and I know it's hard, so I knew I couldn't get a real clear answer. Okay. I'd also like to ask Ms. Crane, sorry about that, a couple extra questions. Do you feel like you are the representative tonight for Maricopa?
Well, I'll do my best.
Okay. So the plan that they have, and I'm just going to be open. We receive messages, there are rumors, food banks closing. And so if the money is allocated toward the food bank, what are the chances that in the long run that action is taken where they close the food bank?
Well, here's what I know, okay, and that's all I can speak to is what I know, is that they made an offer on the Red Barn property. The offer got accepted. They have half of the money. They've put that down, and it's in escrow right now. Other than that, I have no knowledge of that. Wendy hasn't brought me into that conversation. Since I've been back, I haven't had that much time to really talk to her about it, but that's what I know. I know that they are working with ADOT to get funding from ADOT. You know, they're hoping to get this and applying for other grants. So.
Is the closure of the deal dependent on receiving funds that have not been received so far, such as the CDBG grant or ADOT?
No, I don't believe so.
They will close regardless?
Yes.
Of funds that they are hopeful for?
Yeah, yes, this would just make the whole process easier for them in the construction and so on. But yes, they will. It is my understanding, I feel bad, I feel nervous speaking for Wendy, but it is my understanding that yes, the deal will close. They have a year to meet some other guideline goal, but yes, the deal will close and move forward. But
Okay.
I don't know, right? I don't know what I don't know.
Well, they have some of the same challenges in that their plan is not finished yet. So, as you indicated earlier, more
Right.
to come in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Councilmember Whedon.
Don't go yet, Terry. Please. Don't go yet. Don't go yet. No. Thank you. It's good to see you. Do they have a budget that's been put together for their project, including the funds that they are requesting from us?
Yes, but
tonight?
I don't have privy to that.
Okay.
Wendy took, because I've been texting with her, she took time off last week because, like I shared with Councilmember Brown, she thought this was going to be on the last agenda, so she took time off of work. So unfortunately, she couldn't take another, block of time off of work, so she couldn't be here tonight. So she works in Seattle. I don't know if you know what she does, but she's a NICU doctor, so she's there working. So unfortunately.
So there's no financial pro forma, nothing that's...
Not that she's given me. I mean, I can ask her, if I could text her real quick. This is real professional.
No, it just as...
Oh, they do have it, yes.
Here,
Yes.
it's right here.
Oh, well, I don't have it.
Just real quick, Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Wade, there was a budget that was submitted to me that included the evaluation project.
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Members of council, there was a budget that was submitted in your evaluation packets. If you have any questions, I can do my best. I have had some regular contact with Ms. Webb, and I can speak to some of it. But
I apologize. I remember when I read the package, as you know, we did have a conversation about the budget. The question that I have on that, though, is does that include the funds that are available that we're speaking of tonight in that budget?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Wade, as I understood it, the project, her project evaluation sheet, she submitted herself. And there was not a breakout or a formal pro forma as to which funds would go where. The construction budget was strictly for brick and mortar construction and did not include cost of land acquisitions.
Okay.
So I cannot answer as to whether or not these funds would go to brick and mortar or to land acquisition.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, David, can you clarify a few rules for us when it comes to the spending of these funds? Clearly, this is for the upcoming year. If I remember reading through the packet correctly, it talks about the use of them and I think they've all got to be spent in one location. They can't be divided up. They can't be separated. They've got to be spent in one fell swoop. But to that end, what is the extension for being able to utilize it? Because one of the things we just heard was the fact that, there's several different allocations that may come in or may not come in based on grants and other things. So what happens if this allocation is given and the other allocations don't come in and it can't be spent? Is there any way for us to go back and reallocate it to another project? And if not, then are these lost for this 2-year period?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, the answer is upon receipt of the funds, you have 2 years to spend those funds. As I understand it, if those funds are not spent at the end of 2 years, then those funds disappear. We do not have access to those anymore. The CDB regional allocation is a reimbursement fund, meaning that any costs the city would pay up front, and then we would be reimbursed from what I've told 7 to 10 days after we submit for reimbursement. We have built in capacity for this grant into the next year's budget, so that ability is there to pay for those. If come towards the end of 10 years, say 18 months after receipt of the funds, if those funds have not been spent, then there is no possibility to change the use of those funds at that time. Let's say...
At the end of how many years?
But the window is 2 years to spend the funds no matter what. So let's say at the end of 18 months, only a certain amount of those funds have been spent. We cannot then turn around and change that project for this allocation and use those funds elsewhere.
Right, it's an all or nothing at that point.
Yes,
But if, let's say they weren't spent at all in that 2 years, there's 2 years and they're gone.
Yeah, that's my understanding, Honorable Mayor.
And let's say after 18 months where there was nothing spent, could there be a reassignment of the project?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, I have been instructed that there would not be a reassignment for this allocation. The process would start over for the next allocation that is due in 2 years.
Which would, again, for us was 2 years. So,
Yes.
So again, based on the assignment of this project tonight, is where that money's going, and if it gets spent, it gets spent. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and we're on the next 2 year cycle.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, that is my understanding. If I may make one point of clarification that may help. If tonight the selected project continues on the application project, but it is for some reason rejected by the Arizona Department of Housing, then we do have a chance to do a change of project.
Sure.
And that would be, we wouldn't know until, say, October of this year, but then we'd have to do the public meeting, the whole process over again.
But that would be based on their rejection, not on us picking one over the other.
Honorable Mayor, yes, that's my understanding.
And also, just as a point of, whether this happens or not is anybody's guess, but, just by the way of statement, that the CDBG funds are on the chopping block in the president's budget. So it's very possible this is our last allocation of these. Now, whether Congress allows that or not, it's a different story, but anything, like we learned in our legislature, when it comes down to the budget, anything is fair game when it comes to wheeling and dealing and negotiating to make last-minute deals to make things pass. So again, if that's one of those things that they can see that they want to get rid of it, this could be the last allocation we get.
They will.
So, something to consider. Yes, Ms. Crane, do you have something? We'll go to Councilman Manfredi.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Okay, so I have a point of clarification from Wendy. She says we have ADOT funds and we have loans in addition to this. So she has those funds.
Is that all for the property, but not for the building?
Let's see.
And-
Technology.
And if I could tag on to that, is the red barn the intended use once it's purchased?
Not according to the budget. There's a demolition in here.
There's a demolition, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because to rebuild the red barn would be cost
That's
prohibitive.
astronomical, but,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, they're talking rebuilding, Terry, is what the mayor just said, is that in part of the budget, there's a demolition.
Well, if you tear it down and rebuild is
Oh.
one thing, but if you go
Yeah,
in and
but-
try to remodel.
Yes, you remodel, okay,
Right.
you said rebuild, so I
I'm sorry.
misinterpreted that.
There's something in here that talks about the structure itself.
Okay,
It's
so,
a iron structure.
That's
It's not-
right.
It's not the red barn.
That's right, I remember that now, thank you.
okay, so she's hoping to get this grant to pay off the property. So she's getting a loan to pay off the property. She's in escrow for that, but her hope is that if she gets this grant, it'll pay off the property, and the ADOT funds and all the rest will pay for all the construction.
Okay. Councilman Manfredi, then Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Back to the floodplain analysis, and excuse me for not understanding it at times. And I understand the concept of it. Now, if we spend $250,000, right, we allocate $250, my hope is that areas of this are going to come out of the floodplain, correct? Right? Or is this just a study, and then we have to spend money to get them out of the floodplain?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Manfredi, we have received a letter that said that portions of the Heritage District will be removed upon completion of the study. I can ask Public Works Director Bill Fay to come up and speak specifically to those areas, and apologize for any misinformation I may have put out there before.
No, thank you. Bill, what's coming out of the floodplain if we approve 250,000?
Honorable Mayor, equally honorable Councilman Manfredi. What we know that within a flood, anything above that's going to flood within the 100-year flood is within the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
Anything that's going to flood to 1 foot or less in depth, we can just do a letter that says, hey, this is only a foot, don't worry about it, and FEMA will take it out directly.
Okay.
The problem is we don't know how much that is. So in a very flat area, it's possible the entire floodplain is only 1 foot deep. All right, no one's going to lose any big sleep over that. It messes up your yard, it makes your pool turn all muddy, but it doesn't ruin your house or wash away any cars or anything. On the other hand, there's some places where, of course, it gets much worse. We won't know, and typically a floodplain, it's kind of like the ocean at the shore, starts out really shallow and gets deeper as you go. We don't know. If you take all of the stuff that's flooded to 1 foot or less out, we don't know how much that is. It could be a little bit around the edges. It's probably some areas in the far northwest corner. It could be a lot. It could be half. Now, what we got from county is a letter that essentially says, hey, we know that some of it's under a foot deep. We don't know how much. And whatever is under a foot deep, we agree with what city staff is saying. You'll be able to do it. It's called by separate instrument, but we'll be able to do essentially something very similar to a LOMA, write a letter and say, hey, don't worry about the under 1 foot part. And unlike before, FEMA, this is the stuff you designated, this is the stuff we've done a study, and this is the under 1 foot part. Get rid of it.
Second question for you. We're talking only the stuff inside the red box, correct?
My understanding, CDBG grants apply to certain socioeconomic areas that have to qualify. The Heritage District does qualify. The floodplain, in a variety of ways, extends outside of the Heritage District. The intent of anything that we're funding with a CDBG would be to be in an appropriate area for CDBG, which would be in the Heritage District.
So the study would stop at the red line? And the
Yes.
study wouldn't expand over until, say, where Meadows is, and it's all in the floodplain on the northeast side of Meadows.
Yes, it would. Floodplain work is not an exact science. If I can write a letter, if I've got evidence based on this study to pull stuff out, I will certainly take advantage of it, but the intent of the study is to be within the Heritage District.
Right, but in answer to Councilman Manfredi's question, I mean, if the flow is heading from the south west and heading to the northeast, and this portion of red is in the study, and there's a channel or something that's put in there that forces that water to stay in there, then any waters that then go this way and down would be removed from that. So it could potentially remove waters and flooding from areas that are.
Oh, right.
not
It could
listed, yeah.
it could potentially remove, but now we're using, that's common sense, because we're talking about a study and government study, right? So the analysis itself would only pull what's inside the red box out of the floodplain, even though it might affect the other stuff. It wouldn't get pulled out of the floodplain. From this analysis, we'd have to do a secondary analysis that's not part of it.
Not exactly. What Councilman Smith described it as essentially 2 phases. It's not real, but one would be we'll write the separate instrument to pull some directly out, and the other one would be that this provides a roadmap for what private developers, even homeowners, are the ones who are going to be pulling their individual property out. The city probably will be doing this to the extent we own land there. If you physically make changes to the land to channelize something or to raise something, to pull your property out of the floodplain, which this study will make easier, it'll provide a roadmap for developers. The practical effect of that is that the people downstream usually benefit as well. So, hypothetically, if the area on the south end ends up having a developer come in, buy a bunch of properties, and fix his floodplain, the effect of that is a whole lot of the floodplain north of him may disappear in the process.
Right, but I guess just to clarify the question then, The study itself is what's inside the red box. Anything outside the red box is not part of the study. So even if it technically affects them, they would have to actually petition or write their letter or whatever, ask to be pulled out of the floodplain anyway. The other people that are not inside the red box.
The study will be contracted for inside the red box.
Right.
Floodplain work necessarily is regional in nature, so that the study's going to have to look at statewide rainfall and stuff. And if I get enough data to write, I'll be the one writing the letter.
Right.
If I get enough data to write the letter of stuff that's outside the box but still within the city of Maricopa, or in fact, if it's outside of Maricopa but we care about them, I'll write the letter. I mean, figuratively speaking, all ships rise on a rising tide. If I can pull people out of the floodplain, I will certainly do so.
Great.
If it has the opportunity to pull people who are outside the red box, then yes.
Great. Thank you. That was my question. Is
Okay.
basically, can it impact anything outside the red box if possible, without having to do a separate study for everything outside the red box?
The answer to that is not by design, but if we can, I'll take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Do we know how many people live in the Heritage District?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, approximately 1,500 people live inside the Heritage District area. And if I may make a point to Councilmember Manfredi's question, the reason that the Heritage District was selected as a focus of the study is because that satisfies the low to moderate income requirement for CDBG funding. A study done in 2015 with the assistance of Central Arizona governments showed that 76% of the residents that live in the Heritage District are of 80% or lower of area median income.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brown.
I have two questions, one of David and one to Mrs. Crane. David, did I understand you to say that if a project is not committed within a 2-year period, the funds go away?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Vice Mayor Brown, that is my understanding.
No, that's the Arizona Department of Housing. That's their determination. Because I asked that question because HUD would allow years ago. Now, it might have changed. Reprogramming.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor Brown, if I may ask Mary Witkowski, who was formerly a grants manager, well, she left, okay, to clarify. My understanding is that this is different than HUD. This is Department of Housing funds, but they are federal dollars as well. But it was my understanding that the allocation is not spent. We cannot reprogram after a project has been approved. It's only if the project has been rejected.
If I may add, one of the reasons could be we share the funds with the city of Eloy, so we alternate which year we get them. So maybe they could, that could be the reason why.
That could be. I know that years ago, this was some time ago, HUD would allow reprogramming.
Okay.
To you, Ms. Crane, you mentioned a loan that was received.
She's applied for a loan.
Now, it was my understanding some time ago that Chan had given a grant to FOR.
Well, that's on the council agenda for tonight because the city is the fiduciary, I believe, and there's a resolution.
In addition to that.
Yeah, there's a resolution on tonight's agenda for the city to be the fiduciary of that, yes.
I thought one had been received some time ago, separate from this, but that's not so.
Okay, again, I'm not privy to that. I haven't been her treasurer for many years.
Thank you.
Back to Bill for a second. Bill, you had the explanation that this floodplain, basically the study will allow for a developer to come in and buy up a big chunk of land and basically do the. Am I to understand that that's very similar to the Lower Santa Cruz resolution that we've been putting together, where that study then basically takes all that patchwork of landowners along that segment, and by having one solution dictates how, if one of them moves forward before the other is ready to move forward, then they all do it in the same knowledge of where the flow is to go. Instead of having a patchwork solution of this sends the water here and now this guy's stuck because he was going to send the water over here and that guy was going to send it over there. Is that correct? Is that what the study also shows? So it allows continuity?
Mayor Price, it's the same strategy. The North Santa Cruz wash solution is a gargantuan version, but yes, we're starting with a study. We've got everyone on board ahead of time, and it's going to result potentially in home sites for around another 25,000 homes. So it's in an order of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude bigger. If you try to develop well, you'd have to do a study like this as the starting point of an individual development. And if you're trying to remodel a home that involves spending 50%, I mean, it's just figuring out how to hire an engineer at the first place is sometimes a big enough cumbersome requirement that much less the cost, that it knocks people down. If you do something to your home to improve it, to pull it out of the floodplain and have an adverse impact on your downstream neighbor, you've got private litigation is still an option where you end up suing each other or end up, I don't know, my experience, you end up punching each other and it's just a mess. So for individual homeowners and even individual business owners down to, up until you get to like big box level, this is just not realistically, until someone's willing to come in and buy an entire block of the Heritage District at once and do something really big, it's just not realistic until someone starts taking some leadership and doing some study. And kind of, I liken it to, right now they've got a giant blank palette that they just can't figure out. If we do this study, it's kind of like turning it into a paint by numbers. I mean, even I can get that right if you've got kind of the outline on the page.
Got it. Thank you very much.
I think I have probably turned a complex and important problem into trivial again, but sorry about that.
Reminds me of that peg, the light bright, where you put the pegs in. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Councilmember Smith.
Another question for Bill, but Terry.
I just have a point of clarification for Councilmember Brown's question. Okay, so Wendy said yes, she got $100,000 from the auction last year, and she used it as capital funds for this project.
That's what I was speaking of.
Okay,
There wasn't too long ago.
okay.
Bill, we're looking at this Heritage District floodplain analysis because of the fact that we have CDBG grants, we were looking for projects. So my question to you, because I think this was a great suggestion, and it does a lot of beneficial things for our city, particularly in the Heritage District. But my question to you is, if we were to look at all of the city, and so question number 1 is, are there other regions like this where we could do a similar study? And if so, is the Heritage District the first place you would have picked to do this?
Through the mayor, Councilman Smith, there are several places, yes, that are like this. This is again, not counting the North Santa Cruz wash, which is it's a very similar strategically, but a much bigger effort involving a much bigger load of money. In fact, where the developers are actually doing the thing that I said was realistically beyond the capability of normal people. This is the first place I would hit. I'm trying, there's a bunch of places I'm trying to make little incremental improvements, and this is actually the first place.
So if we had a pocket of money, $250,000, and you were asked your opinion on what region would we do this analysis on within the city to potentially remove land and to have, like you said, a map of resolution for developers based on the information that we derive from it, Heritage District is where you would have picked for us to do this first.
The downtown vehicle wash is if I had the exact pot of money that was not restricted to the Heritage District and I was only looking at floodplains, yes, this is the first place I didn't think of it this way, but yes, it is. I could hit Tortosa, the Sacaton flow out by Steen Road. Those are all, given if somebody came to me with a study with $18,000, maybe that's where I would go because I could make I could make an incremental change there. But if for bang for my buck, trying to pull places out of the floodplain, Santa Rosa's already channelized, North Santa Cruz wash. We'll find out a little bit more in the next 2 days about the core and what the developers are doing. This is where I would.
This is where you would spend it.
regardless of CDBG.
Everyone should cringe when I'm completely ad-libbing and thinking things that I haven't thought of before, but yes, that you're asking from the hip, that is what I would do. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Whedon.
Thank you. It's for you, Terry, sorry. I'm just sitting here thinking, if the, it's not actually known that we're going to get $265,000, that's what the ask is, and so it's going to be somewhere around there with the amount. And so I'm going to step out and just assume that these are the funds that would be used to pay for the land and purchase it and complete the purchase for the land. But two questions. How long does the FOR think it's going to take them to build a structure to meet their needs at that site? And how long will they be able to stay where they are?
Where they are is very temporary, that I do know. But I will ask her how long it will take to do the build out.
And if it's temporary, where are they going to go in the meantime?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? This is still the public hearing. Anything else, council, at this time? Yes, ma'am, please come forward. Please state your name.
I'm Myrna Freeman, and this is totally out of my comfort zone. But
Thank you for being here.
I am curious as to who owns the property where the floodplain might be, and if it is privately owned, why the owners are not paying for the study.
I think that would be a generalized question, but I can certainly do my best to answer it. I mean, it is not single-held private land. It's the area that we call the Heritage District. I don't know if that picture's still up there. Yeah, there it is. But that is the original portion of what Maricopa was prior to development, in which probably the home that you live in. And so this is the older section of the downtown area, right there at the 347 over 347 and the railroad tracks and that surrounding area. And so it's not singly held, it's held by everybody else. They do pay taxes. And so one of the things that, the city of Maricopa is always trying to do as a generalized ability as much as we can is to get federal dollars, which these are CDBG funds, federal dollars, state dollars, even our own local dollars to put in towards fixing and taking people out of the floodplain. If you're not aware, the city of Maricopa has flooded in 83, 93, and 2005, and the 83 flood was rather destructive. It's something that keeps me up at night. It also prohibits development, and it really destroys people's ability to change. And one of the problems that we find here in this area is that, things that go on to be redone in this area typically have to have a floodplain solution then drawn into it, and certifications have to be gone through at Pinal County before they're allowed to even redo it. You may have seen an article that was recently run in the paper a year ago that a couple bought a home, tore it down, thought they were just going to rebuild it, and Pinal County wouldn't give them their certifications because they didn't have a floodplain solution. And that's kind of the issue. So everybody in this area, based on 2007 post-Katrina world, is stuck, and they can't adjust their home, they can't fix it, they can't tear it down. They're grandfathered in, but if you're a business and you want to come in there and create something there, what do you do for a floodplain solution? How do you fix that where that flow of water is going? So it really is a concern to the council, as it's 1,500 residents. It affects lots of property, lots of damage, and it's only a matter of time until it happens again. Like I said, 83, 93, and 2005, we're on the precipice, and while it's nice and hot outside, it could happen tomorrow. It's something that keeps me up at night.
Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully that answered. Yes?
I'd like to add to that, the whole concept of the CDBG grant is to benefit low-income areas. And so that in itself is one explanation as to why they don't all group together and pay for this $250,000 by themselves, is they are a low-income area. And so that's the whole purpose of the CDBG grant, and that's why I think it's a great project for this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Crane.
Okay, so Councilmember Wade, I'm sorry. Okay, so Wendy says, and I'm going to smile when I say this, depending on how long the permitting takes, 6 months to build a permanent location on that property. So, City Manager, can you get that going?
We
I'm sorry.
can move at her speed.
And then if they have to temporarily move out of their temporary space, you know, we're looking for space again, you know, and anybody that's been around this community and involved with the food bank knows that this has been an ongoing issue for them. Even when they were out on Gunsmoke Road, and we had meeting after meeting after meeting with public safety about even that location out there. You know, you know, fortunately I'm blessed I don't need the services of the food bank, but I'm certainly happy that they're here for those that do need it. I find it frustrating, I guess, a little bit that it's so hard for this organization that only wants to do good for the community has such a struggle finding a place to land. Like, I know it's not glamorous and sexy to have a food bank in your community, but, you know, it just seems like it's such a benefit. You know, anyway, I'll get off my little box. But
No, and that's something we all struggle with. I mean, certainly since the, you know, the announcement of the overpass is that there's just not a lot of locations for anybody to go here. Thus the high rents we see so often. I had one question as well, and I don't mean to be pessimistic here or denigrating it all, but I am not a developer by any means, but I am unaware of who Forefront Development is, who gave the budget outlay for the food bank. And the reason I ask that is that, you know, as I've seen communities and both small builders and large builders come through to do new buildings and start something afresh, and all the challenges that exist. Again, this is why this debate is happening right now, is because the floodplain creates so many problems and so many challenges. And it's one of the reasons why so many things are either stalled or don't happen as far as development. I mean, let's look at our hotel issue. You know, so often the hotel developer, the first thing out of their mouth is, what can you do for me? And they find that they're going to build this hotel in a floodplain, and they realize it's going to cost them an extra $2 million to fix that solution, and suddenly they're looking elsewhere. And that's a real challenge. It puts us at a very high competitive disadvantage. And so I guess the question I have is, when I look at these numbers, I can't help but question to some extent, you know, how low they are. And while I know that nonprofits are on a budget, and certainly for every dollar that's spent in this location, it doesn't go to food for people, but I just can't help but see that this number is so low compared to the overall. Now, I know to somebody that says $1 million, that's a lot of money. But I'm telling you, from sitting in the seat for the last several years and seeing small builders come through with their given project, the amount of money that is needed to get that sucker off the ground often exceeds this number.
okay, Wendy says it's the same developer, the same people that did Copper Sky.
Development? Forefront?
I just asked her. She says they built Copper Sky.
Through the mayor, Forefront is a city contractor. They didn't, the foreman who is doing this project was the project manager for Copper Sky. His name's Arthur Oldham. Forefront is a fairly reputable firm, and Arthur has a lot of experience doing city projects also. In fact, Wendy hired him because she asked us for a reference for somebody.
So are they giving in kind their services and their fees back in some essence? I mean, is that, because I just look at this and think that.
I doubt that. I suspect he's getting paid. So I don't think he's donating his time or his services, but he's a reputable firm.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, she came to us and asked for a reference and hired him based on, I think, my recommendation.
Yeah,
Great.
I was engaged in that conversation back and forth with Bill and Wendy regarding a reference, and also just some information, and I'm not sure if Wendy's headed down this path, but she also received a contact that I made actually at the Apex event for a developer who was willing to donate project management for the development and construction. So I'm not sure if she's utilizing that, but I do know that she's received donations in kind along those lines.
Good. Cool. Thank you. That answers my question. All right. Any other questions at this time? Again, we're still in the public hearing, so any other questions? We'll get to decision time here in a few. With that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Thank you for your participation. We really appreciate it. I think it helps us give us a much more well-rounded ability to make decisions. That takes us to the consent agenda. Council, items 9.1 through 9.7. Is there a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Let's see. I have a motion and a second. That's great. With that, can I have any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And that'll take us to item 10.1, which is the CDBG discussion again. This is a resolution 17-16, the mayor and city council of the city of Maricopa, Arizona, selecting a project to be submitted to the Arizona Department of Housing for use of the Community Development Block Grants 2017 regional allocation. This is expected to be in the amount of $265,000. This is for discussion and action. Perfect. Can we throw back up on the screen the allocations?
The rankings, I believe that's what the mayor is asking for.
Yeah.
Nope.
You scroll through that. Perfect. Okay. So council, this is, we just had this discussion for the last 45 minutes, and these are the rankings that we have submitted up to this point. Based on the information been discussed today, I'll turn it over to you for discussion. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. In listening to all of the explanations and answers to questions, I'm pretty convinced that I want number 1 and number 3. And I'm going to make a proposal that we can do both. And the reason I'm going to say that is because we don't very often, as a city, get the opportunity to help a nonprofit that helps a significant number of people within our community. And this one in particular, when we're talking about food and being fed. And I know that there's a risk, but I'm pretty convinced that the money from the CDBG for this particular project is going to be used to purchase the land. And so to me, that minimizes the risk. Now, you might say that the risk going forward is when do they actually get the building planted, and I think that is a higher risk, but I think that's outside of the CDBG, and the fact that helping them to purchase this land for, like I said, a project that helps so many people is critical to our city. So I see the CDBG grant funds going for number 3, but I think number 1 is so important that I would be willing to use our available contingency funds to fund number 1, and I don't know how exactly to do that or make that recommendation tonight, because I know using contingency funds is not the topic of CDBG, but that's the proposal that I would throw out, that we end up doing both. And that we take advantage of this opportunity to use the CDBG to benefit a entity, a nonprofit that does help so many individuals within our city. And as indicated, I do believe the numbers are going to grow as the population grows. And so I would like to do both, and that would be my proposal that I would like to put before the City Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Smith. Council. Other thoughts, concerns? Councilwoman Gussie.
Time that I haven't been here, we did do away with nonprofit funding. So I caution everyone to go down that path one more time.
Good point.
May I ask what that means?
Oh,
Because I'm not sure what that means.
In the past, excuse me, in the past, 501s had come to the city when I was, my previous time when I was on council, and they would come in for funding. 4 was one of them, and there was many different 501s. We did away with that. You all eliminated, I think the majority of you were here.
Due to
I was
funding.
not here. Due to funding. And if we go down that path one more time, what makes 4 more worthy of funding this time around when all those other 501s that were worthy also were cut because of funding?
Well,
and I
the
understand this is federal funding. This isn't our personal, it's not coming out of our personal coffers, but at the same time, we're playing favorites once more with 501s, and we're going down that path one more
Yeah.
time.
Thank you, Councilmember Gussie. I don't see it as playing favorites. Any nonprofit that has a service that benefits the Heritage District or the CDBG grant area was capable of coming forward with a proposed project, and they would have been evaluated equally and fairly. And so I don't see it as playing favorites. I know that in the past, CDBG grant funds have been used for a nonprofit being the Against Abuse, and it was used for the purpose of purchasing their land and building their building. And I see that entity as a huge benefit to our community, and I don't see a difference between that entity and the For Maricopa Food Bank. I see them as one and the same. And I think just commenting on the fact that any nonprofit had the capability to apply for this if they provided services within this area would have made them perfectly qualified as well. So I don't see it as playing favorites. I see it as an opportunity to help out.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be misunderstood. I am in favor of 4. I've been working with 4 for years. But at this time, I'm in favor of the floodplain analysis as evaluated by all of us here, because I believe it'll help economic development, as we've been told in the past, and we've all evaluated it here. So that's my last comment.
Yes, Councilor Wade.
Boy, sometimes, you just have to step back. And with all due respect, Councilmember Smith, if I'm not mistaken, were you not one of the primary supporters of the food bank coming to Maricopa? Initially? Initially, okay.
Should that remove me from the discussion?
I think it should.
Oh.
I think it should. Because I think that you have a vested interest in, not questioning your credibility or anything of that nature. I just think it's cleaner, if not, because in your proposal, and it's a good proposal, but it takes our decisions away from us and moves towards another direction, which this was the process that was put before us. And so, yeah, I think it should be that you should recuse yourself on this particular item.
I don't have anything to gain from the food bank at this point. I've been off of the board for 5+ years. I'm not engaged in any of their fundraising, not engaged in, other than being a sponsor one time within the last 5 years. So I don't have a benefit to gain, and I don't feel that removing myself would add benefit to the city. But thank you.
Dennis, is there anything you'd like to clarify on conflict of interest?
Mr. Mayor, members
from
of
those
council,
statements?
I don't see any conflict of interest because we're talking about a nonprofit. I think Councilmember Smith has no financial interest in the food bank, so there'd be no conflict of interest from a statutory conflict of interest.
Thank you.
May I take it one step further?
Sure.
I'll withhold for just a second.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, if you look at the screen in front of you, it indicates 96.7 average. That means most of us support it, strongly support it, giving that money to the Heritage District, which has long needed improvement. We know that population clearly are low-income people. I submit that the food bank should have done a much better job of means testing. There are a number of people who have gone there through the years. I know personally, I wouldn't at all describe as being low income. And that happens in every city. It's free food, you get it. And I certainly wouldn't support transferring a contingency fund for any other purpose. You would use it for contingencies. I don't see this as meeting that test. And I have nothing against you anytime, whatever you want to join, whatever you want to create. I'm not saying this because you're one of the founders. Believe me.
Yes, Councilmember Chapados.
First of all, I wanted to thank the Heritage District for, I know they do a good job vetting things, and their meetings are very thorough in terms of looking at options and exploring things that we can do to help improve things in the Heritage District. But I have to agree with the Vice Mayor that we were independently asked to score this. This is the first time that we've seen the combined averages, and I think the scores speak for themselves. Mayor, I'm going to move to approve funding CDBG funds for project number 1.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Further discussion? You know, this is a tough decision for me too, and this is the challenge of ever being an elected official is you want to make the right decisions, and sometimes no matter which one you choose, it's the wrong decision. And that's a hard position to be put in. You know, I applaud Councilmember Smith for wanting to find a compromise and a balance. That's very much what I like to try and do too. I have to go back and look at this from the standpoint that, you know, I really hesitate taking $250,000 out of contingency in less than the first week in which we, you know, start this new fiscal year. You know, that's kind of one of those big lopsided blows that you don't know what else is going to happen over the course of the year. That's why we have a contingency fund is to protect from those things that come up. We burn through that and we got nothing left. You know, I also have to look this as and again, forgive me if this is the wrong equation here, but I look at this as children, you know. I mean, I would never take some sustenance or something that I gave to one child and keep giving it to one and never spread it around to the others that I have. And that's a hard decision, because when I look at not only the scoring sheet, I think that one of the things that has played in through the course of this discussion is that some of my questions have been answered, and I appreciate that, and I think that personally, that would raise my score, you know. I mean, there's no way of telling where my score fell in here. I could have listed, you know, FOR Food Bank as number 1, you know, but it would raise my score based on some of the answers to information that I got. However, at the same time, you know, the fact of the matter is that we are dealing with floodplain issues throughout this entire city that we spend so much time with, that at the end of the day, we have never given anything to this district in 14 years. And yet we've given to the food bank so many times over the course of the history of this council and of this city over the last 14 years. And there's an immediate need. But same need exists in the Heritage District, and we have given them nothing to take these people, if at all possible, out of the floodplain, which puts their lives in danger, literal mortal danger. And so if you can't see where the challenge here is that we have mortal danger on both sides from not receiving actual, you know, food, but at the same time we have mortal danger from floods that are inevitable to happen. They've already happened, and they will happen again. And it's something we're trying to solve. And if we've never given anything to them, and we have this opportunity here through this federal money, then I'm not sure that we can brush that under the rug. I'm not sure that we can say, you know, that we'll just get to it next time, because honestly, for the first time ever, since, you know, my knowledge is that CDBG may not be there next time. And so how do we keep saying that we're going to give to one organization and never ever give to the other? You know, this entire segment of taxpayers and group that have, you know, basically agreed to fund this city as a whole, right? Because they're not only the helping to pay for it, and I understand they're low income, many of them, but at the same time, they're the ones that signed on the dotted line to say, I want to see this as a city, otherwise we'd still be in the county. They're the ones who made that decision, and don't we owe them something for that? And so that's the difficulty that I see here, is that I want to support both, but I don't know how, I don't see that we fiscally can. And, you know, therein lies the argument that Councilwoman Chapados said, is that this is the scoring process, and it's pretty hard to rank that high without seeing the benefits that come from that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Councilman Manfredi and then Councilmember Smith.
I want to thank Terry and David and everyone for the information they provided today. It helps us to understand the emotion involved with this, of course. But for me, it's a simple analogy. You have to take care of your house before you can help others. And these are houses we're going to take care of. We're going to pull houses out of a floodplain. I would love nothing more than to build a food bank, fully build a food bank, fully fund a food bank, put full-time employees at a food bank, and then fund its operations. I'd love it. We can't afford it. I wish we could. When I look at it, it comes down to the food bank has other options available to it. It's getting money from the auction in different grants year over year. I think it was 200, 100, and now we're actually today going to approve them applying for another grant. They get other grants, they get donations, they have fundraising drives. They do a lot with what they have, and it's a great job. They've been able to help so many people over so long a time. And I thank Nancy and I thank everybody that's involved or was involved in the food bank. I think in this room, you look around and most of the people here have done something, from driving a truck to unloading it, to filling up backpacks for kids, to working on Thanksgiving to give out turkeys. And so that the whole community comes together for the food bank, and I believe the food bank will be fine. When I look at it, the Heritage District floodplain analysis, there's not going to be any fundraisers for it. There's not going to be any more grants that we can apply for it. This is it. This is our chance right now to take $250,000 and fix an issue that's going to help over 1,000 people. It's going to help, people who are low to moderate income fix their homes or change their homes or sell their homes, because they might want to sell their home and move or upgrade their homes or whatever they want to do to it, which they're held from doing right now because of the floodplain issues. So while I look at Taft and Edwards Avenue, those 2 and 4, it's like they shouldn't even be on here, right? Because the real conversation is happening between 1 and 3, and the heart tells me vote for 3, right? But my common sense in my head is telling me I have to vote for 1 because it's going to help more people over a longer period of time, people who are not getting help any other way. This is how we're going to help them. So for me, it's going to have to be 1. And I love the idea of being able to take our contingency funds and fund both of them. But in reality, we can't take a quarter of our contingency funds in the first day of the budget and do away with them. So yeah, I can't see us doing that. But that's what I got. Sorry, a little long.
Council, other questions? Yes. Oh, I apologize, Councilor Smith.
That's okay,
Yes.
no problem. So I want to make clear that the idea of funding for Maricopa Food Bank is no different than Against Abuse. Against Abuse had 10 years of fundraising, all types of different fundraising, and yet we did direct CDBG grants there because it helps people. Food Bank helps people. They do have had fundraisers, so they benefit from grants. Against Abuse benefits from grants. So there's really no difference there. Regarding the Heritage District and how we help the people that live within that area, I see it in that way. Also in what it does for economic development is huge. I think that's a really critically important project. And, I hear people indicating, am I going to spend contingency funds on that? Well, I would spend contingency funds on that because of all the value that it brings in economic development to the people, pulling them out of the floodplain, various other elements, over buying a $30,000 automobile. To me, I see that as an offset in terms of what do you think is important for contingency funds. Contingency funds are for, as we've always indicated, these things that we weren't aware of when we put budget in place that are really essential to the city of Maricopa. This project was a great idea. It came about because they were thinking of projects within the CDBG area, the heritage area, but this has huge value. If I'm going to spend contingency funds, I'm going to spend it on something like this versus what I approved last time for a $30,000 car. So when I see value that way on where do I want to spend my money. If this city budget were my personal budget, I'd be spending money on this Heritage District versus some of the other things that we've spent contingency funds on. So I make my argument in that direction. I don't know that my argument's going to go anywhere at this point. But in regards to contingency funds, I was hoping that there was a way, and we hadn't gotten to that point, where our 1 million contingency that we barely used this year could be allocated to that floodplain analysis. And I don't know if we're too late, we're sitting here June 20th, but why can't we use this year's contingency fund? I don't want to start next year $250,000 in the hole either in terms of contingency, but I was looking at it from a perspective of, is there a way to use contingency that we currently have in place for this year? Yeah.
Councilman Freddie, and we'll come back to your question.
Yeah, as I said, I agree that it's a great, both of them are great. But when we spent money for, what was it for? Against abuse, right? So when we spent money for against abuse, I wasn't on council. I don't know what it was up against, but if it was up against the Heritage District floodplain analysis that would pull all these people out of the floodplain, I would have voted for the Heritage District floodplain analysis that would pull all these people out of the floodplain over against abuse. And I say it again because that is not going to be funded any other way unless we put it in our budget. It's not going to come out of contingency because remember what contingency is for, and the conversations we've had over the last 2 years, or 3 years that we've been on council, both of us, whenever something comes on contingency, it's for something that we didn't know was going to happen and it pops up, right? This we knew was going to happen. We've been talking about this for 2 months. And you've been on, not you, but BFO's been meeting and talking about it, and it wasn't something that we've had a discussion with putting in the budget.
That's because it was part of CDBG. It was part of that discussion. It came about, I just had a conversation this afternoon, it came about because
But it could have been pulled out of the CPDG if we wanted to put it in our budget, if we wanted to. But it wasn't something that we were considering. For Our City came to us last minute. It was the other three were on here. And then For Our City came on it and asked for the money. And, again, if my heart says I would love to give for Maricopa Food Bank, I'd love it. And I keep saying For Our City for some reason. I apologize. I'd love to give the food bank the money, but unfortunately, it's not there right now. It's just not available. And I can't, in my own conscience, I can't vote to give it to them. I know I'm looking at, and we scored it, whether we all speak up about it or not. I don't think anybody scored 4 as the number 1 choice.
But I wonder if they would have, if they knew the information that they know tonight.
I think they would have. I think they would have scored everything the same because the information was given to us before. We had the information available to us, and nobody scored it as the number 1, I believe, because if it's at 60%, I don't think any of us, including you, put it as the number 1 thing. It's hard to pick it as the number 1 thing when you look over the Heritage District floodplain analysis and the fact that it's going to help so many people and so many homes of individuals who are the core, or the center of the city of Maricopa, who were Maricopa before any of us lived here. So for me, again, it's going to be 1, and I won't say another word.
Mayor, may I make one last statement?
Sure.
So regarding your comments, Mayor, in what we haven't done for the Heritage District, I just want to respectfully disagree. Every 2 years, the CDBG grant fund goes to benefit the Heritage District. There have been fire hydrants, the tearing down of nuisance buildings, the cleaning up of the area. So every other year, other than the against abuse, it's been for projects within the Heritage District. So we do benefit them with these funds often. And I know that they have many needs. This is a great project. I don't ever want to say that Heritage District floodplain analysis is not a great project, but we haven't left them high and dry.
I think that's a good point, but I think I would rebut just based on the fact that says, what more can we do for them that is longer lasting than something like that? So, yes, Councilor Wade.
And again, we have used the Heritage District to use CDBG funds. We have not benefited the Heritage District with CDBG funds. We've used it to tear down properties, put in, but only because it was the available, that community was the available community to bring those funds in. So we can consider ourselves as being benevolent, but it was for the reasons that we needed to draw those funds to us. It's just, in my organization, we use CDBG funds as well. for housing, for educating homeowners for fair housing. We lost all the CDBG funds for 2 municipalities decided that they weren't going to contribute. It caused 2 office closures, 3 layoffs of people. The CDBG funds that are going away, if we don't use it for something like this now, and it does come back and we can use it again, it's a possibility that we won't be able to. So I think that, yeah, we've used CDBG monies at the Heritage District, but I don't necessarily think it was totally benevolent.
So we're going to go to Vice Mayor Brown in one split second here, and that is City Manager Rose and Brenda. There was a question earlier from Councilmember Smith about the funding out of this year's out of this year's contingency. Sorry, throwing around too many acronyms tonight. This year contingency for funding potential that other portion of the $250,000 roughly.
Honorable Mayor and members of council, as I understand it, the CDBG, the contingency funding balance is around $700,000. If there is a desire to fund this out of contingency funding, that we would need to we would need to have that service provided within this fiscal year. If there is a desire to fund both of them, it would probably be better to fund the food bank out of contingency funding. And the reason for that is that we could execute a contract with them within a short time frame. However, council would have to accept in making that decision that the approval, I would need authority to execute that contract, which would exceed my $50,000 or $25,000, sorry, authority, and I would need the ability to bring that back for ratification because you will not have another council meeting within this fiscal year. Is that accurate?
And Gregory, how does that affect the budget though, rolling into this year? Sorry, I know you're just, I didn't know what to do with that. It always rolls back in. It would affect.
Yep.
Yeah, well.
City Attorney is reminding me that we would need a very detailed contract to ensure that we're not in violation of the gift clause.
Right. And how would that affect our budget or the general fund into this year? Because, you know, we do some amount of rollover from the end of the fiscal year and some estimates and then moving into that next fiscal year. So clearly there's a budget affectation there when we're talking about suddenly there's a $250,000 hole there, right? I mean, it just doesn't suddenly come from somewhere and then get totally replenished in next year. There's kind of an ongoing roll, correct?
Honorable Mayor, that's correct. That amount currently in contingency funding would typically drop down to fund balance, so it would simply be reduced by that amount. But it would not impact next fiscal year's budget because those funds have not been allocated. We're not intended for allocation.
Okay, but it affects fund balance.
It will affect the fund balance.
Which lowers the overall amount going to
That's
savings,
correct.
which is what the BFO had a discussion on this past couple of weeks ago.
That's correct.
Okay, Councilmember Chapados, do you have one last question? Otherwise, I'm going to Vice Mayor Brown.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Not necessarily a question, but the discussions have included references to helping the city as a whole, helping the Heritage District, helping the food bank and the people that they serve. But I will remind those on the BFO that we just went through a very arduous process where we said no to every department for basic needs. Personnel, equipment, vehicles, training. As a good steward of the taxpayer dollars, I would not support spending any contingency for one specific project when we've just said no to something that affects every resident here, every visitor here, every business here. To me, the city is the first priority. All these projects on this sheet are worthy. Obviously, the food bank serves a tremendous need for this community. But I have to agree with some of the comments that have been made that there are other options out there. We've got a group in the city right now, the Multicultural Consortium, that is trying to provide a space that will do a number of things for Maricopa residents, including possibly having a space where additional grant fundings could be available to operate a hot food kitchen. That's actual grant money that we can have. So if it could house something like the food bank and provide a meeting space, a socialization place, I mean, I think those are definitely avenues worth pursuing. But one of the reasons that I enjoy being on the BFO and being able to do the deep dive in the budget is I get to see from every department's perspective what the needs are, what the asks are. And to me, that is my first priority as a resident and a steward of the taxpayer dollars. So I can't support going off on a tangent without, because I'm sure there's other projects out there that could benefit from these funds. And again, as Councilwoman Gussie said, there was a specific reason based on our limited resources that we did away with the nonprofit funding program. If we want to bring that back, I don't think the way to do it is with picking one project that we couldn't fund one way and do it another, when again, we've just said no to every department on basic needs.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Chapados, the intention was not to make a recommendation on this issue because I think for staff perspective, we would need to do more analysis. The intention was simply to convey that if it is the desire of the mayor and council to move forward in a certain way, this would be the best option for you.
Right. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, I call the question.
So we have before us a motion and a second to approve, number one, the Heritage District floodplain analysis with the use of the CDBG funds. We have gone through further discussion, so we will move to the vote.
Mr. Mayor, who's the second? I didn't get the second.
Second was Vice Mayor, right? And who was the first? You. So first and second, correct. So that is the issue on the table at this time. So with that, can I have a motion to, we have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much for your discussion on this item. That'll take us to item 10.2, Miss 1738. The mayor and city council shall discuss and possibly take action on approving deviating from a City of Maricopa branding guidelines to change the colors of the city logo for use on a City of Maricopa flag. This is for discussion and action.
Honorable Mayor and council members, the Marketing and Communications Subcommittee met a few weeks ago, and one of the items that we discussed was ordering a new flag with the city seal on it. We just discussed the option of ordering the flag with the seal on one side and the city logo on the other side. Members of the subcommittee asked to see our city logo in the blue and burgundy that you see up there. The members of the subcommittee like the blue and burgundy over our primary colors of the burgundy and gold. Our branding guidelines were adopted by resolution, and in the branding guidelines it outlines that we should always use our primary colors unless it's not appropriate, like Maricopa would be a good example. The burgundy and gold wouldn't look appropriate with the Christmas red and green, so in that instance we use white, and others we use black. So in the branding guidelines it outlines that we can do the primary colors, the burgundy and gold, all black or all white. And so I bring it before you to decide if you want to deviate for the flag.
Yes, Councilmember Chapados, Councilmember Smith.
Jennifer, on the proposed flag, would that be on a white background as we see here?
Yes.
Okay.
And so
the other side.
I also have the seal there, just you can look at the colors.
Yep.
And see what you like.
Jennifer, in the staff notes, staff report, it cautioned city council regarding, let me get the right words up. Staff recommends caution when deviating from the City of Maricopa branding guidelines adopted by council. Can you help us or help me understand why they make that caution?
Absolutely. The colors are part of our brand, and so anytime we deviate from them, it's going to dilute our brand a little bit. I know when I looked at these colors, just an example of the blue and burgundy, the first thing I thought was Chandler. So I Googled it, and their seal is blue and burgundy. And so, those colors make you think of certain things. And so we've worked really hard to maintain the integrity of our brand with the colors that we've been using for all these years. So shifting from it can dilute that brand.
And
Go ahead.
in the notes, it also indicated that 2 of the 3 communication committee members agreed with making the request I don't know who the third was, but could you, those who are on that committee,
The
share?
subcommittee is Councilmember Wade, Councilwoman Gussie, and myself.
So what were the concerns of the person? Was that you, Ms. Gussie?
Yeah, I didn't favor either or. I mean, I was okay with either one. But my question to you is, why do we have to come back to this? My whole thing was hoping that we could make a decision without coming back. But since 2 out of the 3 decided on going with the blue, I had no other choice but to bring this back here today. So, I mean, either way, if I would have voted in favor of the blue or the other color, we still would have been here today. So, my decision was either or, is fine.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Can I throw you under the bus?
Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
It was presented, and I thought it looked nice considering the way the logo is, the blue and the burgundy would match, but was unaware of the requirements to keep the seal the way it was. So in my particular position, I would prefer to keep it the way it is because, you know, that's the way it is. That's the way I understand Maricopa to be. That's the way I viewed Maricopa, so there's no problem.
So it was my suggestion to change it to that from an updated look. And I guess I would draw attention to, show me a PDF presentation tonight that has been in those colors. We're looking at one right now, blue and white. Look at our seal, it's blue and white. Look out in that hallway, it's blue and white. Look at the shirt you're wearing, it's blue and white. So at the end of the day, I asked myself, why can't we deviate from those colors, regardless of the fact that it says, I understand our brand, I get it, you know, but we can change that brand as we see fit, you know, where the need arises. And so, you know, in understanding that one side of this flag is to be the seal and the other is to be our logo, which is that you know, that recognizable M, that the way the city of is placed above it and the proud history tagline is below it, why on earth do we have to stay static to it when we've used it everywhere else? If we're going to create this as a permanent flag for us, why can't we use it that way? That's the beauty of City Council, is that we have the ability to make those changes. So again, it's not like this is out of the box thinking when at the end of the day, everywhere around us, we're already doing it. So why can't we? And I think that's the premise of the argument. So, you know, again, if it's the City Council desire to keep it as is, I honestly have no problem with that. I'm happy that we've come up with a logo. I'm happy that, you know, but my thought was to freshen it, to update it, and to really create symmetry, because I think when you look at this, flash back to the logo now, again, right there in blue and white staring you at the face. And granted, we're on a white background. We have those other colors in there, so it's not like we're deviating truly. I mean, we have those colors in there from a burgundy standpoint, from a gold standpoint. They are there. But again, it's something we've done on a regular basis. Our pens have done that. The pen I'm wearing is the old way. The one we had done and it distributed at the city, State of the City, was all blue and white the other day. Is that correct? Blue and white? It was blue and white.
I believe the logo was all white, which is part of the approved
And then it
when
was blue-
appropriate. So it can
blue
be
in
all
city.
white, all black,
Yeah,
or
blue
the
in the center,
burgundy and
right.
gold, yeah.
So again, you know, I think those examples stand true in the fact that we deviate on a regular basis, and it's just a matter of determining. I understand why it's back before us, because again, it is by council resolution, so it takes council resolution to allow us to change something up along those lines. So that's why it's before you. Yes, Councilmember Wade, Councilmember Smith.
I just want to make sure I'm clear that we're just asking for the ability to use the updated one, but not change the resolution. Is that what we're suggesting?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It would
I
be-
just want to make
it would
sure
be
I'm right.
for this
Right.
specific issue of
Just for
this
specific-
flag.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Which is the one that sits in our upper corner and only comes out at the Arizona League and no one ever sees. So whether that's good or not, I don't know, but that's the way it has been thus far.
So that was my question. It's a one and only use. And the blue, going through the documentation, is within the palette.
Correct.
So it doesn't concern me, considering the fact that the blue, almost the very same blue, is in the palette, and the fact that it's a one and only for the flag to go with the seal. Gotcha.
Other thoughts, concerns? Yes, Councilman Chapados.
After all the time we put into this, I want to see this flag more than just at the AZ League.
It's going to hang right there, hopefully. We better get 2 of them made. Other concerns, questions, thoughts? We need a decision, so who would like to motion, please? Yes, Councilmember Wade. We have a motion to approve in what format?
In the deviation.
Oh, the deviation, okay. Okay, so move to approve the deviation of the flag in this instance. Is there a second? Motion and second. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to item 10.3. The mayor and city council shall discuss, possibly take action on the reallocation of the vacant EMS coordinator position to fire captain in the fire department. This is for discussion and action. Kathleen.
Mayor and council, recently our incumbent EMS coordinator retired, which left a position vacant, and provided an opportunity for the city to consider whether or not reallocating that position to a sworn fire captain with an advanced life support certification might be a better position for us. The duties and programming responsibilities will remain the same, including the analysis, planning, design, and implementation of the fire department's emergency medical services programs. A sworn fire captain in the EMS assignment provides some additional versatility to the fire department. They could put this person on a truck if they were shorthanded, and also will assist in employee development and succession planning in the fire department. The first year cost of this change is a neutral cost, but at the end, as this position moves to the top of the range, there is about a 14% difference in salary and about a 16% increase in benefits.
Okay. Council, questions, thoughts, concerns? Yes, Councilmember Chapados.
Kathleen, this may also be a question for the chief or the city manager. I had a question as to why this was coming to us, because I wasn't really quite sure what we mean by a reallocation. When is it a director's decision? When does it go above that? Is it considered a reclass, and what does that mean? So I'm hoping that as a result of the class and comp study that we've currently got underway, maybe some clarification in the future would be helpful. So if we do see something like this, clearly the chief did a good job of outlining the benefits and the increased flexibility, but I got a little confused on the HR end of things, like what does reallocation mean? Is it truly a reclassification? If it's the same duties but with a sworn as opposed to a civilian, does that mean it's an org change? So that might help in the future, so I don't have to ask those kind of questions and we don't have to spend this kind of time, because I was really convinced this was a chief's decision. So that would help me in the future if this happens again, and I actually think it's a benefit to the fire department that this opportunity arose, then he can do that. So that just might help in the future. Thank you.
Council, other questions, concerns? If not, can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 10.4, the mayor and city council shall discuss possible take action on the reauthorization of Mr. Dennis Fitzgibbons, Fitzgibbons Law Office, PLC, for fiscal year 2017-2018 as the City of Maricopa City Attorney, as required by ARS 9-2037 and ARS 9-271. Discussion and action. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor and my colleagues, I rise to give support to the reauthorization of Dennis Fitzgibbons, Fitzgibbons Law Offices, to serve as the legal counsel of the City of Maricopa.
Second.
Third. Thank you. I know. Well, he has to speak first. So I didn't take your motion. So we have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations.
He's the only guy that knows more about Maricopa than you.
Or condolences, whichever you prefer. 10.5, the mayor and city council shall discuss possible take action on canceling the July 4th, 2017 city council meeting. If you all would like to see the fireworks from this enclosed room with no windows, or whether you would like to actually go to the show, that's up to you. So
moved.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Executive
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you sticking with it through us tonight. We are needing a motion and a second to move to executive session again, please. A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and we'll stand adjourned for a couple weeks.